Well, welcome back to another podcast from the Miles Driven. As you can see, Owen is joining us once again. And I did warn you in last week's podcast when I was on my own that this was going to be a bit of a long one because we are doing every single generation of the Volkswagen Golf GTI. It's going to come up in just a minute, but we're going to do the news first. Why don't we start? We've only got a few here to do. So if you just want to see the Golf GTI stuff, you can skip sort of 5 minutes in and we'll be done with the news. But if you want to see this, there's a few interesting news stories. Let's start, Owen, with Lotus.
Yeah, so big announcement this week. Actually, two announcements. The major one being Lotus have unveiled a new sports car, or a kind of teaser image of a new sports car.
Yeah.
So it's a rear shot and it shows two great big exhaust pipes. And they've effectively said that they're going to do a hybrid V8. So there's been some speculation of the power. Lotus have been quite shy about exactly how much power, but the people have been speculating to talk about 1,000 horsepower. So it's quite exciting. They haven't named the car yet, but it's going to be effectively a supercar.
Yep.
With a V8 internal combustion engine. That's a big change.
This is a new angle for them. I can't think of the last V8 Lotus.
Yeah, it was the Esprit. So stopped production in 2004. Yeah.
So when I said it, I thought maybe there's got to be something after the Esprit, but no, there isn't. Okay,
there isn't. That was it. So
they're doing a sports car with a V8.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Yeah, the Emira, because the Emira has two engines at the moment, a relatively old supercharged Toyota V6.
Yeah, the V6. Yeah,
and then a 4-cylinder AMG.
Yes.
AMG M139 engine, I believe. As used in the A45. So they are both going to be non-compliant with various different things going forward at some point soon.
Is that Euro 7 emissions or something like that?
Yeah, there's various bits and bobs. So, but Lotus had to replace that powertrain at some point. And they've effectively said they're going to use a new V6 engine from a new Geely joint venture called Horsch.
I saw this, and I don't know who are Horsch. Do you know?
Yeah, they're an engine manufacturer started relatively recently as a part of a joint venture, and they're basically focused on internal combustion powertrains, but also doing so basically with the big push to electrification, they're now saying actually there's still a requirement for internal combustion engines for various different as they do for various different sizes. The first performance application of a Horsch engine is the latest Caterham, the 1.3 turbo engine.
That's
big as well. Yeah, fantastic.
When I saw it in the press release, I was like, I'm sure I've heard of Horsch, but I thought, you know what, I'll ask you when we come in for the podcast.
So Caterham are going to use that engine in their upcoming race series before they go into production cars. So that's going to be a real test of this.
That's proper.
Yeah, proper, exactly. It's a turbocharged engine as well, which is relatively new for Caterham. But this engine is a V6, a very lightweight V6. They're focusing on the lightweight side because the existing V6 engine in the Emira is actually very lightweight as well. It's quite an old Toyota design and quite a simple design. But they're going to hybridize it. Let's talk about just over 550 horsepower, which bear in mind the current ceiling in an Emira is 400. Yeah, it's going to be quite a step on. Interestingly, it's going to have an automatic gearbox. It's a 4-speed, so I'm curious to see how that works. I know, it's quite interesting. So 4-speed hybridized V6 engine going into the Emira apparently, but they haven't gotten all the information, technical detail, but it is very exciting. It means the Emira can live on for longer, and that car's a real timeless design.
I wonder if it will actually come to production at 4-speed. I mean, because on one element you could say, well, it can because of hybridization, whatever else. On the other side, you go, yeah, but for an enthusiast car, people ask for the GC3 to have a gearbox, even though it was slower.
Yeah,
a self-shifting gearbox. Because even though it was slower, because they were like, yeah, but I want to do it myself. I would have thought that's something that because at 4-speed, even if you want to play on the paddles, it's not really a lot.
It's the hybridization aspect as well. You can get manual hybrids, as you've seen in the Mark 1 Rider Insight, etc. They do exist, but it's going to be interesting. But I suspect it's going to be a new kind of 4-speed gearbox.
Right. Okay.
It's not going to be 4-speed as we know it. So I think it should be fine because Lotus wouldn't release anything that wasn't driver focused. Yeah. But I just find it really interesting, and actually it's Horsch's first V6 engine. And they really are innovating, so it's a good joint venture and a good brand launch for them actually, in terms of they're getting a real halo brand manufacturer in the form of Lotus to put into their sports car. So that'll be interesting. I look forward to seeing that one.
On the very opposite end of the scale, I'd say Audi Q9 is coming out. Q9 is coming out. It's going to go on the new or the newer PPC platform. We've been talking about this off camera. I assume it's going to be shared with underneath will be shared with what will be the new Q7.
Yes, and underpin the Porsche K9 as well. So it's their internal combustion hybridized platform. So basing an evolution of the MLB Evo platform. Yep. So it's not all new platform, but it's
yes, that's a really good distinction to make.
Yeah, so it's an evolution of that platform, but it will underpin other cars going forward as well.
Why do you think we're getting Q9 now and we haven't had it before?
A number of different reasons. I think the luxury point of the Q7 and the Q8 was already operating quite a nice higher price point. There is a trend towards bigger and bigger SUVs. There's also a trend towards 7 seats. So the Q9 will be a spacious 7 seats Audi. Also, I think they've all seen the success of the X7, which is because effectively the Q7 was a rival to the Q5, right?
Yeah.
The X7 has done very well. I mean, people it's been quite controversial in car, but in various markets across the world, it's been very, very successful. So for me, it's very logical. But you're right. I think why now? I'm surprised it hasn't come sooner.
That's really where, you kind of could have seen this 10 years ago being an entry. But I think it's a really interesting point on the fact that it brings in the 7-seater, because as I made a point when I viewed the Volvo XC90 on the main channel, you'd have seen that if you watch the main channel, that's a 7-seat hybrid car. I can't find other 7-seat hybrids. The only ones I could find, they're Hyundai do one, which is a 1.6 turbo. So it's not direct comparison. It's about half the price as well. If you go, because you can have an X5 7-seat, but you have to have it with combustion engine because where they put the batteries.
Exactly.
Same story with the Q7. Same story with Land Rover Defender. So looking for direct comparison that could have, now I would assume the Q9 would become with some hybridization. So that will finally mean, because currently, if you're sat there right now saying, I want a premium plug-in hybrid 7-seat car, you are going to Volvo.
Exactly. But if you go to the mainstream, you've got far more options.
Right.
Absolutely. So Chery Tego 9, if you have a hybrid version.
Tego 9, the Mazda CX-80, I think it is also 7-seat hybrid. So there are out there, but just as a direct comparison to that.
Yeah, premium space, you're right.
It really surprised me. As I say, you can go Defender and X7, X5, but you're only going to have either a diesel or a petrol engine. You're not going to have hybrid. The other part, just sort of sticking with that 4x4 news, Ineos are bringing out a new specification, which will be the Trailmaster X. It's going to be £75,000. I know lots of you really liked the Ineos products, because when I did the buyer's guide, it became really, really popular. I think the interesting, I'm not going to go too far into it because it's just a trim edition, but the interesting point is, currently if you go Trailmaster, have I been saying Trailmaster?
Yeah, but I think they're both right.
No, people made a very strong point.
Really? Okay, I'll go with that. Yeah.
Trailmaster. Sorry, I've actually underlined it in my notes. I've said it wrong. Right, Trailmaster. They are doing it with Safari windows, which was currently an option if you go Trailmaster. Trailmaster X, it will come with Safari windows. The rest of the spec you'll get as with Trailmaster. A few other bits, but that's just a point there.
And then the Grenadier is an interesting moment because they've now resolved the steering issue. So that's
2026 cars
build change. They are taking feedback and improving it, and I think they need to do more product actions. The car had been relatively stable for a while, so they need to do a shake.
It did. I mean, it's been out sort of 4 years, 2022, 2023, 24, 25, and then 26. They've done their revision. So fair play to them, because they didn't change loads, but they did change what people had said back to the feedback ones. And our last bit before we go into our main part of the podcast. So we've got Corsa GSE and, was it Corsa GSE or Astra?
It's Corsa.
Corsa GSE. And I think there's a better stepping stone as to where we're going to go. Polo GTI. These cars, so historically, okay, for some of you watching, it'll be VXR, but GSE has always been, I think we had it in the UK, GSE as well. So it's always been sort of the hot brand for the Vauxhall.
Yeah, they either started off with GTE, then moved on to GSI, then you had the Corsa
GSI, sorry.
Yeah.
GSI, sorry.
There you go. That's all right. And then, but not for a while. And they did it, and the last generation Corsa had a relatively watered down version. So they're now coming back with a bang with this new one.
So, going to be EV. Same for the Polo GTI. So these cars in the same sort of space, size-wise. I don't know about price-wise, because I'm looking at the Polo GTI. Suspicion is pricing around €39,000. So £35,000.
Yeah.
If they do it as a direct conversion, maybe it's going to be £39,000. I think the interesting thing for me is I have a suspicion that the Corsa GSE will pick up more headlines, because as I understand, the Polo GTI is going on the platform that we already have and underpins quite a lot of Volkswagen's EV vehicles. So this is going to be the first GTI. They've got GTX on the ID3. So they've tried, and they've used that badging, but they've never truly gone,
Yeah.
there's your GTI.
Well, they've got some mechanical reasons and credence for doing it now, because they've incorporated an LSD, which is quite unusual in a front-wheel drive EV so far.
Yeah.
And the Corse has done exactly the same thing, and I think they were launched almost on the same day, and they've got very similar horsepower.
So these are really going to go.
They really are, yeah, definitely.
It's an interesting attempt for me, because I highly doubt, and we don't know the sort of steps to where we're going to be, that the next generation Golf GTI, I highly doubt that will be an EV. Maybe it'll be some sort of mild hybrid. Well, almost definitely it'll be a mild hybrid, but maybe it'll be a plug-in hybrid. Maybe it'll be any type of things. But the one thing I'd be fairly confident is that it won't be a pure EV. Whereas the Polo GTI, unless Volkswagen change their mind, is. So it sits in their lineup. And I suppose the only thing interesting aside for the Polo GTI, and what will either be its positive or its negative, depending on how you view it, will be it's going to be on that EV chassis that's already used under the Cupra Born and under the ID3 and the hot versions of those, the VZ for the Born and the GTX for the ID3.
Yeah, Skodas too.
Yes. And now, as you've made a good point, they are adding some additional stuff into the GTI to really give it that differential factor. But whether
The differential, no.
whether that will give it the market acceptance that it's looking for,
That's going to need to really push it. But I think they've also seen the reception to the Alpine A290, and that's been really positive, and it hasn't had that level of change actually mechanically. But now they've lost the powertrain effectively in terms of the internal combustion engine. It's more and more focused on the chassis and on the mechanical.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really interesting.
Seats, those kind of things. It really is.
So is the conversation going to be, this has got the chassis dynamics we've been screaming out for, or is the conversation going to be, we've lost it's currently got the 2-litre very ubiquitous EA888 engine in it. So it'd be interesting to see which way the conversation goes in around a year's time when they're actually sort of on the street. Or not on the street, if not.
We'll see
the way it goes. Yeah. That takes us very nicely into our main story today. So we're going to cover every generation of GTI. I think before we get into GTI, shall we just give a moment of the Volkswagen Golf? What the inception point of Volkswagen deciding, they've got the Beetle, they need to move forward, and they're deciding Golf. Now, for some people watching, it won't have just been a Golf, because of course it was a Rabbit in North America for a while. It's been, depending on where you are, you may have got the Jetta instead of the Golf in certain eras and generations. But ultimately, the Golf has been Volkswagen's movement for the last 50 years.
50 years
to fill this market. Anything before we go into GTI you think we should really sort of stand out about just the Golf?
Just briefly, I mean, it was designed to effectively replace the Volkswagen Beetle, but we all know it didn't do that. The Beetle carried on for a lot longer. But actually, the Volkswagen Golf, designed by Giuseppe Giugiaro, really, really well received. Moved to front-wheel drive because things like constant velocity joint pricing had come down, so it could actually make it work for better packaging, more interior space. Was a design icon as soon as it was launched. I mean, it's an incredible.
Absolutely, that Mark 1.
And it's I've owned a few, and the Mark 1 is a real time design.
Actually, between us, so what's the ones that we haven't owned? Neither we said off camera, neither of us have owned a Mark 4, but I think you've owned stuff on that platform. I've owned the Leon Cupra R and the Audi S3 with that 1.8 turbo, but not the Golf GTI. Mark 6, I think neither of us had.
No, I haven't had a Mark 6, no.
And then the Mark 8, new one.
Yes, I mean, you've got a Mark 8, but it's GTI, so yeah.
Yeah.
So between us, we covered a lot of Golf.
Yes. Okay. So just an interesting, for two people to be in a room and be like, we can go 50 years of history, and a lot of these have not just been driven but been owned. It's just an interesting side note of how ubiquitous across the entire car world having a GTI Golf, is. Let's start off at inception point. So, should we go 1974 or should we go 1975?
Harsh question. Well, it was unveiled in 74, left-hand drive car in Germany,
Right.
and the first production cars started to touch down as left hookers in Germany in 1975. So a really big point for Volkswagen Group. It wasn't the first hot hatchback.
No, that's actually, before we go into it, actually, we should make that point. A lot of the times it gets credited with being the inception point of the hot hatch, but it's it's the one that has made it, I suppose, mainstream.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It inspired the ones that came after, I think is a fair comment.
Yeah, that's much fairer than saying it's the first, because ultimately, as we know, it's not. But then, so world premiere 1975. That's when it's shown to the world, because 1976 is when everyone starts getting them. Yeah, for that Mark One. I think I don't know how long to stick on the Mark One. It's such an icon car that part of me wants to say that this is the one you could talk about for 5 hours.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it's the one that has, like, for an enthusiast, it has the highest relevance and the least. Because it's the one that everyone wants to talk about, but not everyone wants to go and buy. People are actually looking at the newer generation.
It's one of the rarer ones, isn't it? Because
that's the other thing. If we talk about Mark II, it's going to be a different conversation.
Absolutely.
Mark I,
Mark One. I mean, it was such a significant point. I mean, the inception of Mark One was it was effectively born in just the right way. So it was a small team of people, a kind of skunk works piece, a group of people who really liked the Mark One Golf, really passionate about it. Felt like I could do a bit more oomph behind it. So they took an engine from a larger fuel-injected engine from an Audi at the time and put that in.
Yeah, I mean, is it EA 195?
I'm not sure the ending code, but I know it was a 1.6 single-point injection engine, Cage Electronic, and it had about 110 horsepower, I believe.
Yeah.
In a car that weighed around 800 kilos, that really made it shift and had really good torque as well. So they put that in. Externally, the very, very small changes. So it had a deeper front chin spoiler. It had some decals around the rear window for black and around down the side as well. Had wider tyres, still on 13-inch steel wheels, believe it or not, but they were wide, the better and wider tyres. And then most importantly, the iconic piece round the grill and the lights is the red framing.
Yeah,
what an amazing detail that was.
It's interesting because how red framing goes. Mark One goes into Mark II, goes into Mark III.
Didn't make Mark
III. Didn't make Mark III. No. So it doesn't make Mark IV either. No. It comes back for 5.
It does, and that was framing the grille, not the lights and everything.
Yes.
Just a center section.
Just interesting that it's something today that's sort of the icon. If you look at the 8.5, the latest GTI still has the red strip, and then you'll know it's a GTI or an R if it's both painted black in a car park. One will have, either it used to be chrome strip, but it was blue strip. I don't think the R has any distinguishing strip now, but GTI will always have red strip. It's just funny that they had that design aspect from the beginning and got rid of it for a few years.
We'll talk a lot about the Mark V, don't we, and see if that car had. But but it's and the Mark. So the Mark I GTI only really landed in the UK in the late 70s. So there was a big campaign.
Yes, we should
be left-hand drive only.
It
was left-hand drive only. There's a big campaign from the UK dealers, and especially when they've seen such a positive media response. The UK was a very big performance car market, and they really pushed for it. So Volkswagen toured up for right-hand drive. So when it first arrived, it was a 1.6 litre 4-speed with the little rear lights. Then very, very quickly went on to 1.6 litre 5-speed.
Yeah, so actually there is, because there is iterations of the first gen GTIs, and there's
3 or 4.
Yeah, so this is something we should probably explain. So first one comes out. Okay, so that does 2 years.
About that, yeah.
Yeah. Then it gets through. What was the revisions you were just saying?
So then it goes. So 1.6. Then it had a small design change where it went from chrome bumpers to plastic bumpers. Still the same powertrain.
Yeah. Then it has third. So it does that for about a year and a half, 2 years.
About that, yeah.
And then third iteration. So still Mark One, but third iteration. So now we're stretching into the 80s. We're going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had. Can you remember?
Yeah. So about 81, they switched to a 5-speed gearbox, which for me is a real sweet spot. So you had the
81s, you say? So if you're listening and wanting to buy 81.
Yeah. And that only lasted about a year and a half. So the 1.6 5-speed is quite a limited production run before it moved on to 1.8 5-speed.
Right. Just an interesting note. I nicked this straight off of Volkswagen's own PR thing. But you probably know that they only originally planned to build 5,000 units. And do you know what the final number was?
A lot more than that. I don't know the exact number. I suspect you're going to tell me.
The idea was they could recoup their money if they sold 5,000. And I made a note, 461,690 units.
It's a classless car.
I mean, can you imagine you start off with if we can just sell 5,000, we can get our money back. And it turned into that. I think they had to actually take the shells off the line originally because it was, I mean, I know 5,000 will seem a lot if you're watching this, but it's not in car world
No,
terms.
it's not in the context of golf, especially.
Yeah, especially I mean, I don't know how many Golfs they've sold in total, but to sell nearly 500,000 of just the GTI is incredible.
Mhm.
Is there anything else we want to
Mark 1. Yeah, so the 1.8, there was a special edition campaign model as the run out into the Mark 2.
Yeah.
So by that point, it had the 1.8 brought more torque, but slightly less revvy. But I think that's the real kind of that was the volume Mark 1 GTI.
Yeah.
It only really came to North America as the Rabbit GTI as a 1.8 in 1983. So actually, they waited quite a long time, the enthusiast group in America, for that car. So it took quite a long time to arrive. And that had
I think that's why it went 1.8 to go to the US.
It's a good point. It might well be, because torque is very important in that marketplace. But it had these square front and rear ends. The tail lights and the front lights look quite different. There's actually quite a nice amount in the States now. Be there quite often, where they've got quite a lot of early Mark 1 round headlight ones.
Right,
This is really good. So
they were doing conversions.
really understood, absolutely. But yeah, that was the key thing, really. So yeah, Mark 1, a lot of life cycle actions and changes in quite a short space of time. And we had to campaign strongly in the UK and the USA to get that car here. So, yeah.
Also, I suppose probably some iterations of safety tech and stuff like that to get it over to the US. If there was, and actually they're over 40 years old, all of them now, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly they're over 25 for imports and stuff like that. So
yes,
there'll be a Classic in the UK. If you want to import one, or if you want to buy one, what do you think of all the first or Mark 1s?
Yeah,
what are the sweetest?
The Mark 1 I would have would be the 90.
Which one did you buy?
Oh, I've had. I think I've had all.
I know. I was about to say you.
But for me, the 1.6 GTI is with the 5-speed gearbox is
so that's the third iteration, not the very last iteration. That third iteration.
I've mostly owned the 1.8.
Yeah.
The one I'd have is actually the 1996 City Golf from South Africa, which is a Mark 1, and still had the fuel injected engine, and they made it right up to 1996. So I'd get as late as possible. It was a 5-door only in South Africa. But that's the real sweet spot for me. Real unusual car. And that's really good styling. So.
From an owner, if you want one, fly to South Africa, find one from the 90s and import that one. If not, though, you'd be looking at about 1982, 1983.
Yeah, the last ones are built in 1983. The 1.6 5-speeds in 1981 to 1982.
81, 82. Okay, so that's the pick of the Mark 1s, which probably will be debated about hotly on the internet. So
absolutely, quite right too.
But interesting, just as a side point, if you're watching this and you're very tall, or you're worried about fitting in them, you fit in them.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. I'm 6.5 feet tall, so you'll be fine. Yeah. So yeah, right. Mark II. So 1984, they got to make a change. They got to go Mark II, and step up in power.
Broadly similar to the late Mark 1s.
Yep.
So yeah.
Sorry, you're right. 112 PS.
Yes.
I don't know why I was thinking there was an upgrade in power, because it gets heavier, and they do. Oh, okay. I know why I think it gets more powerful. It's fine. There's a side note to the Mark II. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So this comes out 84. Still offered across the world. Europe, I guess, is going to be the ones to get this car first. So you're probably looking 85 in most markets to guarantee that you're going to get.
There were some very late A-Reg ones, and mainly B-Regs when they arrived in volume in the UK.
Okay, yeah. Are there as many iterations in Mark II?
Well, yes, you've got the basic 1.8 engine remained throughout the Mark II's time.
Yeah.
So the 8-valve engine was a pretty ubiquitous engine. We obviously had the high performance introduction model later on, which was very exciting, from 1986. So 2.5, 3 years into the Mark II's life cycle, you had the introduction of the 16-valve model, 1.8 16-valve, and that was a real moment for the car. That went up to 139 PS.
Wild.
Yeah,
in that weight of chassis, actually,
it's incredible. I love mine. It's amazing.
As a quick side note, what is it about going from 8 valves to 16 valves? Just in a nutshell, what is special about doing that?
The real importance of running it super unleaded. Otherwise, it doesn't like it at all. No, it's much revvier. So you have quite a lot more horsepower and the same kind of weight. You had the similar wheels, tires, brakes, and everything. There was very few external differences other than a lovely little red 16-valve badge below the GTI badge on the front and rear grills.
Yep.
And you had some other small detail changes. But no, it was the revvy nature of the car, and it felt really quick, actually.
What do you think that would have been some engineers of Volkswagen looking at how they step up to the next power. And there must have been a discussion about, do we go for larger capacity, or do we go for 16 valve from 80? Like, what do you think would have been a deciding factor of why don't we go back up to 1.8, for example?
I think that's perfect angle to take, and I think that's the reason is because they probably felt a little bit burned by the fact when they were developing the Mark II, they knew the engine was going to stay the same as the Mark I, but they were going to go up in weight by about 12-15%. So they knew it was going to take the edge off, and we've actually seen that in later GTI iterations as well that will come on.
Yes.
So I think they've seen probably success of cars like Dolomite Sprint, for example, with the 16 valves, the reviness and the interaction. I think it added a bit more sparkiness. So if you go for a revy engine like that with twin cam and all those kind of aspects, and the high revving breathing aspects, it becomes more frenetic and exciting. You've just add loads more torque. So I think that was probably part of their angle. Also, by keeping it 1.8 litres, you're keepeping the weight down over the nose as well. You're not increasing the size of the block.
Oh, right. Okay.
Could have been that. I'm speculating as early engineers that
it's
logical to do.
That would have been part of the discussion. And ultimately, I suppose, adding 8 extra valves to an engine, you're not really facing any real weight penalty. And I suppose you're just mechanic. Because this is a time, you have to sort of reset your brain a little bit. This is the mechanical engineering era. This isn't, we can remap the engine to accept these things. If you're doing it, it's all got to be mechanical behind the doors, sort of thing,
Yeah. There's also the weight, last month weight put aside, the power steering became optional on the Mark II, so it wasn't standard, and the steering was quite heavy on the Mark I's and Mark II's.
Yeah.
So if they'd gone for a bigger engine, added even more nose weight, it would have made the steering even heavier. So that could have been part of the consideration, maybe.
As a side note, you get less power if you had to have a catalytic converter. So I'm thinking US probably had to have a catalytic converter. Not sure about UK.
I don't think they had them until much later if they did.
Right.
So cats became kind of more commonplace from 1993 onwards, which is the point the Mark III was introduced.
Yep.
So I don't think, perfectly prepared to be told I'm wrong,
yeah.
I don't think any of the UK Mark IIs had catalytic converters.
It's 9 horsepower difference.
Wow. That's quite big.
Yeah. So it's just the changes. So you're going down, basically. So 139 is without, PS is without, so 138 horsepower. And you're stepping down to 128. Or 129.
Yeah,
so
difference. I don't think we did it in the UK, but might
no,
be in the States.
But just just an interesting aside, because I don't mean it wouldn't, I don't think, stop anyone buying the car, but it's just an interesting aside that you could have, because again, that would have been a mechanical decision. They couldn't map the engine on one to accept a cat and map it out essentially for another. It's all got to be, and you've got to control it for a lot of engineering going on.
Absolutely.
On
testing regime.
Yeah. I always like to highlight that, because I think it's too easy to skip across. Oh yeah, they just did this. You think that must have been what some engineer out there, if they ever watch this, they're thinking, yes, that was 4 months of my life without sleep.
Exactly happened. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, that was a really hard brief actually. But that was something the Mark II showed. The Mark I was this massive over-engineered aspect.
Right.
So huge. You look at the amount of Mark IIs you still see on the road nowadays.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Really, really tough, made for the long haul. Yeah.
Maybe that is why the GTI is seen as the inception of hot hatch, because they're around. But I mean, if you just want to go out and buy the original hot hatch, if you're listening to this and not watching it, I'm putting that in air quotes, you can go for a 50-year-old Golf GTI, and as long as someone's either maintained it or they've rebuilt it or whatever, the shell and everything will just work.
Yeah. I mean, it's in many ways the most enduring hot hatchback of all, right?
Yeah.
Actually, figuratively.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This car in 1990 has a moment. Yeah. I don't know if it's someone at Volkswagen got very, very excited. Someone was desperately trying to talk other people into it, and they sort of said, "Hans, shut up, you can do it."
Probably happened.
Do you want to talk about it a bit? Or do you want me to? So they supercharge it.
Well, they did supercharge a Golf. Whether you could actually there's this category as CCI, because it never was.
This is the thing I sort of. I thought I'll open it up and then hand it over, because this is a bit of a hot potato.
Yes, the special. Yeah, so they put a 1.8 supercharged engine, which also went into the Corrado.
Yep.
And that bumped the horsepower up significantly. You're talking 160 odd.
Yep.
So that was and they actually toned down the design of the car as well. So they actually took away things like the red rim grille and those things. So it was never actually called a GTI. So maybe it's more of an Uber Golf, kind of being a Golf that maybe come back to another time, but it was a special thing.
I think Volkswagen might want, but I've seen this with brands before. if you spoke to their heritage team or you spoke to their media team, they would sort of quite softball it in as a GTI today. They were like, "Oh yeah, the G60 GTI," and it would have to be someone who really knows this stuff. Who goes, "Really? Are you sure?"
No.
And they're just sort of like, "Well, we're kind of claiming it now." I've seen this happen several times over the years, and people just.
Are we okay with that? Yeah. Not sure we are.
It's a funny situation when manufacturers start going, "Oh, we're just going to claim that over here, guys." I had it on buyers guys before when I was doing it, and someone would leave a comment saying it's not one. I'm like, well, the media channel that has responded to me has said it is, and I'm like, so if the company themselves are taking it as that, do we have to kind of accept?
Let's let the customer decide.
Right, that's probably the best way to do it, isn't it? Very, very interesting sort of situation where you get to the end of the Mark II, or well, 1990. So you're getting to this point in the Mark II where I guess there's a bit of product planners getting involved here, and there's the idea of.
They were there before, but in 1990 you went, and 89, 1990 you went to big bumpers as well, which made a big difference for the look of the car.
Yep.
You had the wonderful BBS RAs now as an option
Yep.
on the 16 valve, and you had the iconic oak green color. That's a real design classic, actually. People talk about the Mark 1, but actually the Mark 2 peaked around 1991 for me as an oak green GTI 16 valve.
For the very last ones, essentially.
Yeah,
where they were saying goodbye to the car, and they're saying goodbye to the chassis, because Mark 1 and Mark 2, there is differences definitely, but the bones,
the
got
design was
carryover and
similar.
stuff,
There was some there, but yeah, the body structure was a lot bigger on the Mark 2 and a lot heavier and more safety impact, all those kind of aspects. But yeah, it was definitely the end of an era. One small car worth mentioning is also the G60 Synchro as well, which is the rally homologation car for Mark II, and it had wide arches, all those kind of things, like a back in the day Audi RS4 is maybe. So that's one worth mentioning. But yeah, it was an incredibly capable car, and I believe the Mark II sold a lot more than the Mark 1, and it had a very enduring life cycle. I mean, it went on to 1992, the Mark II, so it had 8 years.
You think today, people looking around Mark 1, Mark 2, I actually have to admit, it's been when I was in classics, the prices would have changed since then, so I can't really comment on what prices would have done. But desirability, do you think people are making decisions of Mark 1 just because it's Mark 1, or do you think Mark 2, as the years go by, is starting to pull those?
Have its moment, I think. The Golf Mark 1 GTI is having its moment at the moment because it's the 50th anniversary, effectively, of the GTI aspect. But yeah, I think we've seen appreciation, both of the car itself and the values of the car increasing significantly on Mark 1s in the last few years. And that's because they're getting harder and harder to restore. I know this from painful experience because of parts availability. We have an amazing network in the UK, some incredible suppliers, but it's still some things that are quite hard to get hold of. But yeah, there's nothing else like a Mark 1 GTI, to be honest. It's really, really compact. It's significantly smaller than even the ID Polo GTI we discussed earlier.
Oh yeah.
So the dimensionally and the weight aspect, and it's very, very usable. I mean, if you get a 1.6, 1.85 speed, they will do mega mileages really quite comfortably. It just does everything. It's Swiss Army knife performance cars. But yeah, I think they're having their moment now. I think the Mark II will have its moment again, but maybe you've got to wait a little bit longer. But they're still very much in demand. A good 16 valve Mark II is a very valuable car.
If you were, I know you've had both of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you were rebuying today, if you were sitting around the classifieds looking, would you plump for Mark 1? Would you plump for Mark 2?
Oh, that's a really.
We're gonna cut these two off,
yeah,
because then we're gonna go into the next gen. And my view of Golf is that they pair up. So Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5, Mark 6. Some of that is because I know platforms just get evolved. Basically, even number gets evolved from odd number. That's general, not total, but it's a general rule that I'll follow. So I think we can cut off also because every 2 generations of Golf is like a decade, and people have grown up with it as either the desirable car or the bedroom wall car or whatever. So you kind of find people that will fall into about a 2 generation. Sometimes they'll step over, Mark 4, Mark 5, but sometimes it will be that 3, 4. So if it was Mark 1, Mark 2 today, and I put you in on spot.
It depends. I mean, in terms of pure unfiltered drivability, you're going to want a Mark 1, probably the Revy 1.6, and again the 5-speed box to make it more usable. For all-round capability and excitement, I'd probably say a very late Mark 2 16 valve with those 15-inch BBS RA wheels is incredible. So I've kind of quasi the answer to your question, but it depends. But
Well, I think you're saying if it's a driver's car, if you're going to drive it and you want to have fun, then it's end of the line Mark II.
yes, I go with that.
And
use it all around.
And if you're love the GTI, love the nameplate, love what it stands for, then you buy a Mark I.
Yep, absolutely. Nice summary.
That's good. Let's step into. I think we're going to go into the slightly tough era for the GTI, only because whether these could be the best cars in the world, but they aren't. Okay, I don't think that's controversial. But the 3 and the 4, they sit in this era where, for whatever reason, if you're a Volkswagen enthusiast, some people do love the Mark III and Mark IV, and the Mark IV has got a following because of its tunability and stuff like that. But you talk about Mark I and Mark II, you're talking about classic appreciation. People just want to have them in a collection. You're talking about the purist and all that sort of stuff. Now we step into Mark III, we start a different conversation.
Very, but you used a really good word, and that was tough. A tough era,
right?
So the Mark I and Mark II have been built on their toughness and durability. The Mark III took it to the next level, maybe a step too far.
Good way of looking at it. Yeah, okay. So power is up from the beginning this time. We're going to step up and
3 whole horsepower.
And we're going to change the look as well. I mean, it really was
big departure, the Mark III.
Yeah, and I suppose, being that it was such a big departure, and the fact that Mark I and Mark II had been so celebrated, it was almost that tough third act, and it was almost destined to be the one that people would have a slightly sour view of in comparison. As I don't want to say it's a terrible car, because I know some people love the Mark III, but it seemed to be that point in car manufacturing even where there's a way things have been done, and there's a way things will be done in this era that is very, very different, and has to be, and that's, for a variety of reasons of emissions and safety and all this sort of stuff. But one of the cars that you see it in the most is probably the Golf GTI. That changed Mark II to Mark III. So this does a 7-year window of
bit less. So actually, the Mark IV came in '98, so it's actually had a relatively short run relative to Golf. But it was it came in initially with the 2-litre engine, which was also shared in other group cars.
Yep.
Sat 115 horsepower, a bit more torque, but obviously again heavier than the Mark II.
Yeah.
So you had amazing things like airbags and proper ABS and those kind of things, and it still looked a bit like a GTI.
Yeah.
But I think it was quite a lot more, as you alluded to, quite a lot more rational.
It
wasn't a screamer. It was more rational. But they did bring things back the following year. So they actually launched the 2-litre 16-valve version with the lovely chunky 5-spoke BBS wheels and with the ABF engine, which is 150 horsepower. It was that brought it back a bit. But yes, the Mark III launch with that 2-litre is a bit of a
interesting for me. I think they had no choice but to get, not as in no choice. They had to give it quite a lot more power because the TDI came out during this generation, about midway through, maybe just a little bit later, and that had I've got a note of 110 PS. That means that when the diesel was coming out, if they hadn't changed the power of this car, you'd have a GTI with about 4 horsepower more than the TDI.
Exactly.
And as much as you might want to celebrate your diesels, that's probably not the best.
I mean, diesels were really we're getting into their stride.
This is sort of mid-90s point going forward. This is where diesel is really starting to press some.
But you're right. I never thought about that, to be honest, Miles. But you're absolutely right.
I mean, you just think there must have been a meeting where the diesel team are over here and they're extremely excited at the idea of we're going to be chasing a GTI, and the GTI team are slamming the door at them like, no, you're not. Absolutely not. We're not having to.
Yes, it did happen.
That would have been a 3 o'clock in the morning argument, wouldn't it?
But they never made a GT at that stage of it. Right. So that came later. But yes, that and also the torque will have been higher than the GTI as well.
So this is what I'm thinking. There would have been a point where on paper, on paper, there would have been marginal difference if they hadn't changed it. But on the road,
it would have felt quicker
because you've got that much lower down torque where people are driving cars A to B when they go on a test drive. You remember when I sold cars, you leave the dealer. Most of the time, dealers are in places where you've got a main road nearby. There isn't probably that many driving roads nearby. So people get to drive sort of 3,000 RPM. They're not really sort of testing a car. And I had it with the MX-5. We actually had some roads really far afield. And if someone was very keen, but they wanted to test it out, we'd just say to the sales manager, back in half an hour. Because you'd have to go all the way out there because there just wasn't. Just imagine someone coming in who's sort of into cars and there's a diesel and the salesman says this and this, thinking, oh, I thought GTI was meant to be quick, and it not feeling that much more. Just as a side note, when the Audi A3 8P generation had a 2-litre TDI in it, and I once test drove a guy in one of those 2-litre TDIs and in a 118i. In fact, sorry, it was a 318i. It was the BMW Compact. If you remember that car?
There you go.
And he said to me, I'm not going to buy the diesel. It's too fast. And in my head, I was like, the BMW is quicker, but you've got to, the 0 to 60 is quicker, but not the way he drove it. The way he drove it, he was terrified of the diesel because it was such instant torque. And at that time, we're talking nearly 20 years ago, that was the first time people were having that sort of torque burst. So an interesting moment in GTI history where there must have been a very serious conversation of, no, we need more power and we need it now.
As a brand, can we do this? Yeah. So that's where the ABF 2-litre 16 valve came into the Golf.
And you get as far as I can see, that's the 20th anniversary model. I'm not sure they do anniversary models before the 20th. I haven't seen.
I suppose the campaign might have qualified at the time because it was 10 years into the Mark 1 since it was unveiled, but I don't think it was necessarily positioned as that, really. It was more of end of production.
Because now we get 20th, 30th, 35th. Every 5 years we get an anniversary. Now, as many of you know, we've just had the 50th anniversary model come out. This seems like the start of that.
Well, there's so much goodwill and so many cars on the road by that point. I mean, the branding and positioning of GTI as a brand has gone down so well globally, and by that point, you think about all the other competitors who joined the fray, right?
Yes.
And therefore, Volkswagen now, by doing the anniversary, they're stamping their mark on the fact we were here effectively.
Yes.
We inspired all you guys. It's a bit of a power move, which is actually the right thing to do. Yep. If they're effectively first market entrant for a volume hatchback, performance hatchback, then they want to reassert that position.
Should we go into the Mark IV?
Yes. Yeah.
So interesting because we don't step up in power, and we have two powertrains. We have the introduction. I wonder if the reason you get the 2-litre is whether Volkswagen didn't think the 1.8 turbo would be ready, or whether they felt it wouldn't be the GTI engine because it was the first time they were going to go turbocharging it. It just seems odd to me that they didn't really sort of march ahead from the beginning.
Well, the Mark IV was interesting because it was they're more kind of premium design focused. They were moving the Golf up market, becoming more of a premium product. Now that car, the base GTI Mark IV, had two engines. It had the 2-litre existing 115 horsepower car engine carried.
Sorry. You made a really good point there. I said it carried over the power. It didn't. Sorry, because of the 2-litre, it didn't have the power. My head was in the 1.8 turbo already, but we should make
as well. So the 1.8 NA, which was originally came out on the Audi A4 3 years previously, but that was there was a bit of a tech conversation. That was 5 valve per cylinder, so that's a 20 valve 1.8 NA engine, which was a GTI lump. But I think it only had about 120 horsepower. And again, the Mark IV had gone up in weight again, so we got to a stage where it was really almost questioning: is this really a GTI? There was no funky seat trim. There was no real external differentiation. There was a period on Mark IV where they didn't even badge it a GTI until it went to the 1.8T version. So that was a really difficult. I think probably, in my perspective, the Mark IVs, between the Mark III, it's really struggled. The GTI, it was really getting to its later Elvis stages. So it's sort of a fantastically engineered car, but it was much more of the GT, less of the I.
Yes, okay.
I think so. Very comfortable.
They do save the day at the end, but we're going to come to that in a second. Because it's an interesting point that we have a 2-litre, a 1.8 litre, and the 1.8 turbo, and it really is the 1.8 turbo that people now think of as the Mark IV GTI. The 2-litre, I think, does it roll? I think it rolls out in 2001. I think it sort of just comes out. I don't know how long they did the 1.8 turbo without. the 1.8 without the turbo. I would assume. Sales must have fallen off of a cliff the second that,
Not long at all.
I remember very rarely seeing them. And back in the day when this was the hot hatch of, if you wanted to pick between them, the Mark V wasn't either quite out yet or, the Mark IV, you're looking at it, everyone would say 1.8 turbo. No one was saying the 2 litre. No one was saying the regular 1.8. I worked with a guy who had the 2 litre one, and he was a car salesman with me. I said, "How come you went 2 litre?" Because I got a crazy deal on it because I work here.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not a reason to buy a GTI.
No,
You know, but again, it was the truth of the matter. He got a deal on it. But if we concentrate on where I think most people will, when they talk about Mark IV Golf GTI, they're really talking about the 1.8 turbo. I think that's, by now, any of the ones that are 2 litre 1.8 have probably just been stripped for parts. I don't think really there's much that they would have, because they will have the GTI seats in them, and they could, I think, be optioned with the Recaro ones, but you know, just at the age they are, no one's saving them. The 1.8 turbo, on the other hand, likely would have been getting saved, people being passionate about them. They do start to realise that because of the weight gain, because of the position it is in the market, it's going to need to have some push on power. But they've got a problem, and that's that Audi have the S3. Seat are getting a push from the Volkswagen group, so they've also got this higher horsepower version. So I'll get very technical for a second. There's a KO3 turbo.
Yep.
Then there's a KO3 S turbo. We're going to come on to that in a second. And a KO4 turbo. KO4 turbo is the high power ones. Yeah. So that's what the S3 gets. That's what the Cupra R gets, but the Cupra doesn't. But interestingly, well, actually, let's save the Cupra conversation for in just a second. It also goes into the Audi TT. And in all of these iterations, it's got more power. It's really creating a problem for Volkswagen, because what do? Do they put the high horsepower in the Golf, but then what is the Audi S3? You know, this is the trouble, you know, of product.
Yes, it is, and it's about brands allowing to do certain things, right? So you mentioned about the push of Seat. At the time, they were pushing the Seat sportiness through, so therefore they get the higher power engines. But actually, what does that do to the more profitable Mark IV Golf GTI and all those?
Imagine being in 2002, there would have been a conversation somewhere, someone saying to Volkswagen, or someone in Volkswagen saying to themselves, "We can't have the 180 horsepower engine, but Cupra can." So people are going to go cross shopping, and they're going to see the Cupra at 180, the Golf at 150, and then the step ups for the higher horsepower.
The Golf's more expensive. The Cupra's got a higher standard specification.
Right.
It's the newer shape car.
Yeah.
That was the big launch of the Leon. Was this Cupra version. So yeah, it was difficult.
Put them into a real, but then did mean that when they went to give this car I think it's 2003, they say, okay, the Golf needs some kick up the backside.
Yes.
So they've got the engine ready, but it's not going to get the highest horsepower one. And it is an interesting point that today it gets a Golf R engine. Essentially, when they do anniversary, they put Golf R engine. But back then, it's not going to get an Audi S3 engine equivalent of the time. It's going to get the 180 horsepower. That gives the 25th anniversary, which, in my view, does save the day.
It's fantastic.
It enhanced the looks a lot. It took a lot of the bulkiness out of the styling, actually, which is odd because it adds to it. So you should think if you added bulkiness to it, but it somehow, with the bigger wheels and with the
it was really clever position, because they did full body color on a lot of the trim. They launched a new bright red color as well, which really
yes, they did. Yeah,
lovely 18-inch timed BBS wheels. And the detail was great because they actually had dark tinted front lights and cherry red lights. They really went all out to differentiate that car.
Did they give it some tartan?
I think they might have done. I think they might have done
of it.
I think they some tartan, actually.
Hold on, I've got the iPad in front of me for these exact moments, knowing that we were going to have this.
The external changes were really significant on that car. And I think for me, it sounds a small detail, but the lighting units actually made quite a big difference.
They
changed the whole face of the car.
I feel that they gave it a sportiness edge that the standard car didn't have, which is an oddity of the time.
And it also helped it leapfrog the Leon 20 VT as well, which was getting all the plaudits and the really good press reviews. And actually, this brought that car back into focus, the Mark IV. So yeah, I think it was a really clever move, but they really had to go quite hard to do that. It's not easy to do revised light units and new wheels, bigger and all those kind of things. So they really pulled all the stops out for that car.
So seats are set of Recaros, but they are not tartan. They are. I don't actually know where they got these seats from because I'm tempted to say they might be in the Leon. But either way, they're Recaro seats, and they're sort of a dark red on the inside,
Nice.
and with the black on the outside. But yeah, it might
Had
have
different dials as well. I think it had like
It
had red
Yeah.
needles and stuff still backing. Yeah.
So I mean, those are really. You've got to convince someone to spend that money, haven't you? To do all those
They're
bits.
quite high value items because that all those things together really lift that car, make it a proper anniversary, a proper celebration.
Yeah.
That is going all out for that kind of thing.
And they did actually give the diesel the same treatment. GT TDI,
150 PS diesel for that
anniversary. I mean, interesting that they, after sort of the pinch point, maybe there was a deal done in the Mark III. Like, listen, we need more horsepower than the diesel team. Okay, you've got it, but you need to pay them back at some point. All right, I tell you what, they can have our 25th anniversary.
I mean, you asked me a question about what was my favourite Mark 1, Mark 2, actually, to 3 to 4.
Yeah.
That TD engine, with 50 horsepower, having driven it and experienced it, it's an incredible unit. Also used by Seat and other Volkswagen Group cars. But that felt like a V6 in terms of all the torque it had, and actually it worked with the chassis really well. So that is a high point with that diesel engine.
Someone I knew when I sold cars had that engine in the Ibiza FR, and they had it remapped. I think it was remapped to 150, and it was a Larry diesel, which
TD engine.
At the time, Larry and diesel didn't. Those were not two things that happened in the same conversation. I remember just trying these things.
And massively tunable, proper category, really high pressure direct injection. Went into the Fabia VRS incredibly successfully. And it's got a cult following today. That PD engine, it's really the pump diesel engine, and it just worked really well in that Golf application as well as the Leon as well at the time. So
it kind of feels a bit pointless asking of the Mark III and Mark IV which one would you pick? Because that's like, is there anything if we just move the 25th anniversary off? Because that would, I think, for both of us be between those to pick. Is there anything in the Mark III that would be a standout for you if you were looking at Mark III today specifically?
Well, that's a question because you said Mark III. You didn't say Mark III GTI.
I didn't say
There
Mark
you go.
III GTI.
And that's probably for another podcast. But yeah, the Mark III peaked outside of GTI for me. I did like the detailing, things like the twin optic headlights and the body cladding and stuff. So the first cars, it was a pretty big deal when the Mark III came out in terms of the comms around it because the Mark I and Mark II had been so successful. But no, it wasn't a moment for me, the Mark III in the GTI context, even with the ABF at 2-litre 16-valve engine. But no, it came in a different format with more cylinders.
So then we move on to if we've been on a roller coaster, we've been going up and up and up on the Mark I and Mark II. Sorry, Volkswagen, but I think we've had a little bit of a dip when we've gone Mark III.
I think they might acknowledge that.
Yeah, they probably would. Yeah, and Mark IV, maybe we can say that's where we found the dip, we found the bottom of it, and we did start, as I say, once they moved into that anniversary, we did start to edge our way up. So we've edged our way, just inched off the ground again, and now we're seeing in 2003 Volkswagen start talking about the next generation. 2004, I think they take it to the motor shows to start showing it around early in the year. And there is, I think officially it's a 2005 model year, but 2004 there are
late production in right-hand drive for 2004. The Mark the Mark V Golf came out before GTI. There was the standard Mark V Golfs. There was a TD and GT, but they didn't have the GTI version until 2005.
As an aside, Volkswagen themselves put the Mark V GTI as the comeback. That's their own press on that car.
Statement
is the comeback. The Mark V is the comeback with power up to 230 PS. So it's just interesting after what I said there that they themselves do seem to think that that's where
it's such a big part of their comms. I don't think the role of Mark V can be underestimated or underplayed. I mean, the whole platform for Mark V compared to Mark IV was a big change because the C segment market in which the Golf operated, it had moved on a lot in terms of technology. So a huge change on Mark V was actually the introduction of independent rear suspension. And that meant that the whole platform was far more cultured, mature, ride handling. It lifted it up to the next level. It was a significantly more expensive car to build than the Mark IV. And that will come back later to a discussion point affecting the Mark VI.
So we should make the point, new chassis. at this point. New platform.
All new platform.
The Mark 5, draw a line. There's no carryover, I think, at all from Mark 4. This is, I can't remember the name.
Boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the platform that's underneath it, but it's all, and it's going to take us into Mark 6 as an Evo version, or is it? Yeah. So we've got what goes underneath the Mark 5 now for the next 8 or 9 years until we go into the Mark 7 in a minute. But so yeah, late. I think there was a point. I think September 2004. That's when the very first production versions do get shown. Get shown out at the Paris Motor Show.
Yes.
So yeah, there probably would have been a few. I think I've seen 54 plate, but they probably are just very early 05.
Press cars, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So this launches 200 PS, 200 horsepower, metric horsepower, 2-litre turbo. So we've stepped up the capacity. We've gone to a different engine.
The FSI engine.
Yes.
That had originally debuted in the Audi A3 2 years earlier. It's naturally aspirated.
Yes.
The first car to get, which is a 150 engine, but having driven a lot of those, pretty anodyne engine.
Right.
So I was working at Audi UK at the time. We were really excited about the 2-litre T engine. And that was first debuted in the GTI. It's the first one to get that engine. And much more character, and it really works.
Do you think there was a bit of conversation going on here between Audi with the A3 product and Volkswagen with the GTI products? Because I remember one of the sales managers that I worked with had a 3.2 Audi A3, and it was all kitted up from factory, all kitted up, and it was called some sort of special version of it, but they hadn't launched the S3 yet because it was on a 2005 car, and it was sort of this moment of you couldn't really tell what Audi was going to do because the Volkswagen had said we're doing 2-litre turbo GTI. Audi hadn't announced what they were going to do, and then they had this 3.2, and we know there is a separate story, and we're not going to go into it today, of the R32 that will get its own.
We'll get there.
We've obviously had inception of R32 in the Mark 4 generation. It's also Audi have had it in the TT, which is a big battle between them who had it first. But the Audi are over with the A3, and underneath these two we've got similar platform, essentially the same platform. I'm wondering if Volkswagen had to sort of say, well, we want the GTI Golf to have a very specific identity, and we don't want to share that identity because we've had that happen. Leon, Audi S3 it took the very sort of top mark of the high water line. We've taken that back in the Mark 4 with the R32. The high water line for a Golf is now R32. It's not step up to Audi. Seat have been put off to the side, and they've said, you're going to get all the performance stuff, but we're going to try and keep a little bit here and there of specification. That
we're not going to have four-wheel drive or those kind of things.
Right, yeah. And it could have been a disaster, I think is what I'm trying to... It could have been that the GTI completely loses its identity here. If they hadn't really had a plan between, though I'd say 4 brands, because Skoda with the VRS is around this era as well.
Yeah.
The Golf could have ended up being something a bit lost in.
I think that's you've nailed the reason why they held back the introduction of the 2-litre T for the Golf. There would have been a strategic decision at that level to do that, to create that impact. The 2-litre T engine from the GTI went into the A3 very shortly after the Golf GTI came out. But in Volkswagen Group, my understanding is it's very much who gets certain technologies first.
Right.
So therefore, the Golf GTI had to make a big impact.
Yep.
So therefore, it got that 2-litre T engine. Then they've done some really interesting seeding in the marketplace and through media side to actually let people know this engine is coming.
Yeah.
And it was really successful units. So yeah, I think it was the fact that the GTI got it first, and then the TT followed with the 2-litre T and all those kind of things. So became a very ubiquitous engine. But yeah, that was a big part of it because it was a super torquey engine. It was a genuine, by that point, 150 mile an hour car. By that point.
Yeah. And with the DSG, we get into the 6s for 0 to 60 time. So manual was still just over 7.2. I've got 6.9 seconds for a DSG. First time we've also stepped into an era where the GTI is a automatic car. Now it may have been automatic in some markets with some, I don't want to call it a slush box, but an old school auto.
Torque converter, yeah.
Right. This is the point where we say, well, Volkswagen are saying to the world, actually, we have an extremely fast gearbox, faster than the human can do it, and sort of push it behind the GTI. Because I don't know that the DSG comes into previous generation R32 and TT, and I'm sure they both debated on who's going to get that technology first and everything else. But GTI Mark 5 is probably where this really has an impact, and where customers actually start going into showrooms and being said, look, you know the GTI. Do you know the GTI DSG gearbox version? And you start to pull in even more interest, because as much as there'll be those that love the manual, and the manual gets the golf ball, edging and that sort of stuff, it pulled another audience over, and you could say it's faster and it's new technology and all that sort of stuff. So
it worked really well with that 2 litre T engine as well.
It really did.
That was a really good combination in any Volkswagen Group car.
When I used to, these would come in quite often to be sold, used, 2 or 3 years old. And I remember the first time I drove one with a DSG. That's what an impact it had, because I hadn't at that point. You have to, if you go back to sort of 2007, 2008, there isn't, but now everything's got twin clutch, not everything, but snappy gear changes can even be had. ZF at 8 were able to do it from an auto.
Yeah.
But back then, you knew you were in an auto. If you went into a manual, it was always faster.
Exactly.
And then you get into this, and the first time you take it on the manual, it goes vroom, vroom, and it gives that little sort of let off of the gas, a little bit of air, and you just keep going. There's no, almost as we would talk about EVs today, having this relentless, you're at 0, now you're at 100, just by keeping your foot down. That DSG gearbox felt like that at the time. You just went vroom, 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 and it would keep going. I wonder how much Volkswagen, because obviously ultimately we know DSG then goes into pretty much everything.
Yeah.
From that point,
it had its torque limitations for some applications. So
interesting.
Yeah, but this is why the 6-speed was a lot tougher than the 7-speed in some Volkswagen Group products. But yeah, the DSG was very well received, and everyone started copying it afterwards. Went into motorbikes as well. I mean, it's just here.
You're right.
Yeah.
This car does get its anniversary moment, so it gets pump up of horsepower. So this is the 30th anniversary, 2006, 2007. Interestingly for me, I think in the UK, although it's 2006 is the anniversary, you see a lot more of them on a 2007 plate.
Yeah, they would have unveiled it in 06 as part of celebration.
And then it just happened to be by the time. Yeah. So power is stepped up, 230 horsepower.
They followed the previous anniversary logic, actually. A lot of the Mark IV inspiration pulled across into the Mark V anniversary, actually. It's impressive to see.
It's slightly interesting aside, and I don't know if Volkswagen had done this before, but they started to do a couple of special editions for this GTI and used the anniversary powertrain, the Pirelli edition, and gave it funny seat material and stuff like that. I remember when I covered this on the guide, and I couldn't really find a reason why that car existed. If there had been a relationship from Volkswagen's inception of Pirelli or something, but it seemed at the time, obviously there was a close relationship, and that's what was behind it. But
and also from a product planning perspective, they're looking for ways to increase the average transaction price of a Golf GTI. So they're trying to push the car up. So if you bring in special editions, you therefore break certain glass ceilings or barriers about a price point for a Golf GTI.
Yeah,
that's part of the story as well with those things. Bear in mind, this is it is an era where hot hatch prices, where power's going up and the prices were going up, and that's a way of improving the transaction price. But I think there's also Volkswagen Group are quite good at sponsoring some of their relationships, and Pirelli's been a long running one for them, and Pirelli considers itself a premium tire manufacturer, so why not
pair the two up?
Early collaboration,
which is just a really interesting aside. And if you're out there and you love Golf GTIs, find yourself a Pirelli one, because that's probably where you really would be standing out. Just aren't that many. I mean, everyone can spot the anniversary on this car, because again, they followed very similar formula to what they did on the Mark IV, wheels and all that sort of pattern and stuff. But Pirelli one is that step different. But you get all the anniversary sort of powertrain tweaks and that sort of stuff, so you're not losing out. This car then gets to the end of its life, 2008. They keep making it until 2008. I suppose, again, I feel this was such a high point for Volkswagen. Maybe whatever they had released next wouldn't quite live up to it. Now, I know there's Mark 6 fans, because when I said in the buyer's guide for I did the Mark 5, Mark 6 together, and I said the one to buy would be 30th anniversary over a Mark 6. People in the Mark 6 community took exception to that. But that's my view of it. Having owned a Mark 5, having driven them, having driven lots of the anniversaries, it's a special car. And not to say the Mark 6 isn't a good car, It's just
it was a step change, wasn't it? From 4 to 5 was a massive step change.
yes,
The Mark 5 to 6, it kept the same platform and actually adopted a more prosaic. There was a Volkswagen Group design direction that the Mark 6 adopted, which came from other vehicles as well. So things like the longer rear lights were quite different, all those kind of things. So it was a bit disruptive.
Yeah.
And also the story for the performance focus of the Mark 6 was actually the R.
So this is the big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've tested the water of in the just to step back to the Mark 5 for just a second. The R32 continues 250 horsepower out of its VR6 engine, but the anniversary gets so close. I think actually the anniversary, because its horsepower was only 20 behind and it had turbocharged torque, so the way it delivered power, it I think was challenging the R32 in those years. So towards the end of the GTI, it sort of pushed, and Volkswagen obviously couldn't do too much more with the VR6 engine, being that it was pretty long in the tooth by this point. It actually did carry on quite a long.
It's also naturally aspirated, so it's much harder to get more horsepower out of it.
Yeah, so you've got I suppose the engineers would have probably known for quite a long time. There's a lot of long legs left in this 2-litre turbo concept, because they were going to switch over to the engine numbers are going to switch over, but there's a lot for them to go at. Whereas that VR6 they can increase capacity, which they did. The SAT R36 gets a 3.6, goes in the Cayenne, goes in a few other Touareg, yeah. But ultimately, you're going to get chased by the turbo petrol, eventually, and that's going to give you lower CO2, which is important when you're selling cars. It's also going to give you higher fuel economy. So
Throttle response.
all these things are going to chase down to it.
Flywheel action. There's quite a long list.
So in the Mark 6, it seems Volkswagen kind of make that decision. Okay, well, we've justified that people will buy the 2-litre turbo on the higher end. They don't have to have a larger engine to distinguish our top model. And so in this case, we're going to make the R carry, I'm not going to say the same engine as the GTI because there's lots of changes, but on the basic face of it, a 2-litre turbo and a 2-litre turbo. And we'll differentiate them with styling and then power and everything else, and all-wheel drive going against front-wheel drive. But sticking with the GTI, so 2009, we get the 6th generation, 6th era of this car. It does step up power from the anniversary, but it's only 5 horsepower up. I think initial response to it is pretty mixed, actually. Whereas the Mark 5, it's hard. If you went to look at the reviews back in 2004, 2005 of the Mark 5, you'd struggle to find someone say this is, basically, you'd struggle to find anyone not classing it a 9 or a 10 out of 10.
Oh, I was working with Volkswagen Group at the time. It's transformative. Yeah, I mean, I remember very clearly in the office seeing the first Transporter turn up with a Mark 5. It was a base model. I was so excited. We were working in Audi at the time. We were really excited for Volkswagen, Volkswagen Group, seeing the first Mark 5 turn up. It was hugely transformative, and I think that feels like a big part of it, because there was not that big sea change between Mark 5 and Mark 6.
Yeah.
So
Mark 6 turns up. It's got a little bit more power than the anniversary model, so it is more powerful. I think it does gain a little bit of weight. It has to gain a little bit of tech, and basically it has to have a lot of adjustments made to it, because it's going to carry the Volkswagen Group from 2009, 10, 11, 12 into 13. And I think you've got Euro 5 emissions came in, I think, around 2007. So they know that they're in the 5 era. 6 is going to come a little bit after.
Euro NCAP standards are increasing.
Euro NCAP was changing.
Standards. And also, it's on the fact that the Mark 5 was super successful as a car, but it was very expensive to build.
Yeah.
So part of the brief of the Mark 6 was, can we consolidate a bit and find some ways to make that car more cost effective to produce?
Yeah.
They didn't do things like, they could have downgraded back to torsion being suspension and the manufacturers done. They didn't do that. They kept on with the multi-link, which is good. So that maybe people didn't see a big sea change in quality between 5 and 6 either.
Also, going back to the power thing, so I was talking about the anniversary models earlier when I said 5, because it's 10 horsepower difference. In the regular ones, I got my head stuck in anniversaries, because we are going to get the 35th anniversary that's going to have 235 horsepower, and you've got 230, but the regular one is 210, which means if it's an odd moment where I don't know that this happens in any of the other eras. Possibly if we were to include the G60 supercharged one, then you could say it happened before. But essentially, the Mark 6 comes out with less power than the anniversary version of the Mark 5. So I know power is not the be all and end all, but to new buyers at the time, there was a moment where this car is not as powerful as the anniversary of the old one. And they weren't going to have the anniversary around for a little while. So there is this sort of, especially I can imagine a journalist at the time, if you've driven and given a raving review to the anniversary, you've now got to find the aspects of the 6 that are going to stand out. And of course, different chassis dynamics beneath you. You're still 210 horsepower is still going to punch down the road. It's not, it's not like you stepped 50 horsepower back, but it's not what we're used to seeing. We're used to the marketing department's really getting ramped up on, we've got X amount more power than before, and it's, hopefully it's lighter. Probably it isn't. It feels more like you say, that they were basically trying to find a way to continue the life of the success they'd had, but while making some money. And
I'm sure that's the core summary of what the Mark 6 was. Not doing a GTI. Yeah, absolutely.
So they do bring out the 35th anniversary in 2011, which is, as I said, 235 metric horsepower. So there is a marginal step up in power. I'm a bit surprised, if I'm honest, that they didn't push the power a bit more than what it had been. But maybe that is just a better signal of what the Mark 6 was doing.
Yeah, and also they hadn't gone a particularly bigger wheel and tyre package. Also, the GTI as a concept is about kind of agility and deftness and those kind of things. If you put a load of torque, and they were all front wheel drive, we haven't had a 4-wheel drive GTI. If you put a load of torque through an open diff through the front, it's going to get a bit unruly, and that's not very GTI. So part of it.
So maybe that was more of mechanical limitations at the time, engineering limitations of this is the Mac. We can get another 5, or, through this. We're pushing too far past that. Maybe that's
from a marketing perspective. They very much knew by that stage the Golf R was coming, so therefore we have to create headroom and clearance for that as well. And bear in mind that is effectively the launch of the R division with this the Mark 6.
So just the Mark 6 R is 265 horsepower. Yeah. So I suppose, what could you do with the GTI anniversary if you pushed it up to 250? You're getting too close. Now, funny enough, generations later, as we'll come on to, they're willing to do that. But at the time, I guess because they want the R to be special, they've already stepped away from a bigger engine. They need to keep the differentiation there.
They need to justify the higher price point.
Yep. Right, yeah. And the fact that the R is heavier, because of its all-wheel drive system, you need to make sure it definitely is faster. So, yeah, I suppose there is I don't know, it's an interesting one for me. I like the Mark 6 Golf, having driven lots of them, but I just think it's a bit trapped where it is. It feels a bit like a situation the Mark 3 Golf found itself in, where everyone celebrates the 1 and 2. People will talk about the late 1.8 turbos, and then into the Mark 5. It all gets very celebratory, and we know what's coming in a minute, which is the Mark 7. And the Mark 6 kind of sits in between. It didn't get a very long life either.
No, it didn't.
I mean, I think that's the shortest of all the Golfs, actually. I don't know any Golf that's only essentially a 4-year run.
Yeah, it's really short. Completely. Mark 7.
Feels more like a second facelift. Well, actually, the Mark 5 the Mark 5's only around for 4 years. So this is almost like they facelifted the Mark 5.
Almost like a heavy facelift, yeah.
Yeah. Weird.
I think it's that Volkswagen Group design direction being rolled out as well. Right. So therefore, it's that distinct. They were trying to create as much DNA between the Volkswagen Group products across all the pieces as possible in that era.
Yep.
So I think when it came out, it was considered to be fairly conservative design direction, where the Mark 5 was a very big departure from Mark 4. So that could have been part of it as well. Yep. But no, an interesting time is, say, relatively short life cycle. So potentially they accelerated development of the Mark 7 because maybe the Mark 6. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the numbers about sales of Mark 6 GTI.
No. And I mean,
people who have them love them, and they are fantastic cars.
I think
take away from it.
This is where we should make a point that, okay, the Mark 5 is the one that everyone sort of celebrates. The Mark 6 isn't then suddenly a bad car.
No,
it's just it sits between the Mark 5 that everyone celebrated and the Mark 7, which we'll come on to now, which everyone then celebrates again,
and then the Mark 6R. just to
Yeah.
create some noise.
Yeah. So it kind of it
A
sort of
lot of internal competition.
it got boxed in from every corner really, because it's got the R above it. It's got the Mark V it's trying to sort of step on from. It only gets a 4-year window, and then very short, very quickly, really. I mean, the anniversary comes out. There's a bit of a splash for that. That's 2011. It gets one more year, and in 2013, Mark 7 turns up. So I think maybe it's just the victim of the exact point that it was in. And the Mark 6 could have existed 3 years earlier or 3 years later, and it would still be in the same position that it's in.
Yep.
But okay, anniversary, again, for me, would be the one to pick. But like I said in the guide, I mean, this may have changed since I did the guide on it, but at the time, a reasonably good Mark 6 was very similar money to a 30th anniversary Mark 5. And for me, I'd be looking at the Mark 5 30th anniversary. But years have gone on since then. Maybe now Mark 6 gets a bit more appreciated. Mark 5s get a bit older. We know there's some rusting of front wings and other issues that can pop up on them.
You're not losing much going from Mark 6 to a Mark 5. Going from to a Mark 6 from Mark 5. You're not losing much.
No, I think there is a point that I think the Mark 6 gets the very first gen of the EA 888 engine. I think I don't know exactly when it steps, if it's immediate on 2009 or whether it happens slightly after, but this is the Gen 1. But ultimately the Mark 7 gets it's impossible to let's go Mark 7.
Building up for this.
Yeah. So Mark 7, the one that is widely sort of, as I say, if this was a roller coaster, we've gone up for Mark 1 and 2. We've started to sort of decrease. We went on a bit of a downhill for Mark 3. Mark 4, we sort of met the bottom of that and found our way going back up. Mark 5, everyone's lit fireworks for, and it's everything's fantastic. And I'd say Mark 6 was at the top of that curve, and it's not had a big dip. It's not like how people may remember the Mark 3, but there's just a little bit of waning of excitement. So it's plateaued. Yeah. So we had a bit of a big dip earlier, now a smaller one, and then we go into Mark 7, and all of a sudden it's almost vertical at this point, how people start to celebrate this car. So comes in, interesting that I guess there's still the conversation around front wheel drive, how much power you can get through the front wheels, keeping the character of the car. So 220 horsepower is what you're going to get. They do a performance model. Interesting, this for me, that they don't wait for the anniversary to bump the power up. And they haven't got to wait very long. So the 35th anniversary, was that 2011? 2011 is 35th. So they've got to wait till 2016 to do a 40th anniversary, but they come in very quickly, launched 2013, and almost immediately you can have GTI performance.
Yeah, and I think it's also related to the fact the competitive space has got even more hard.
That's something I wasn't thinking of. Okay, that's
average
good.
power had gone up. So the Mark 7 was again a really big big jump, and the appeal was massive. But you're right, they get to a stage where the power's going quite a lot. But we had also chassis in that stage, even with open differentials, were much better able to handle that due to suspension design, tyre technology, and also stability control program systems have moved on massively as well. So it can still handle its 220 horsepower through an open diff through the front wheels. But the performance pack was really interesting because it had Volkswagen Group's mechanical LSD, which is the first time we had an LSD into Golf GTI.
Yeah.
Also had bigger brakes, quite significantly bigger brakes, and a bit of extra horsepower as well, and some detail changes, some larger wheels and low profile tyres. And that really did change the car quite a lot. So it was a really good improvement, and it wasn't particularly expensive either.
No, I mean, it wasn't a big jump in price to go for a performance. So we moved to 220 on the regular one, 230 on the performance. There is a difference in weight from the Mark 6. Do you want to guess what it is?
Oh, I don't know. I'm hoping it's not a huge jump. Enlighten me.
So it's a decrease.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Does that change? Do you want to have a guess?
No, I wouldn't know where to start. I'll get that right.
So it's an up to, because of course if you could put options on both, but 42 kilos.
Wow.
So about you're listening in the US, about 80, 90 pounds. Yeah, something like that.
The performance pack, probably put that back in.
It's like almost certainly, yeah. But interesting. You don't normally get throughout the history of cars a drop in weight. You only get drops in weight when they release the special version, the lightweight version. But I suppose an indication of the new platform beneath it, an indication of new metalwork,
more use of aluminium.
I was going to say,
but basically learning from the TT on a similar platform, it had much more use of aluminium. You also had a big competitive push from the French at the time with their whole hatchback brigade as well, and the dynamics were incredible on the for example, the Meganes.
Do you know what the one I was going to say was
Megane? It was just missing it at that time, so the car really had to respond. I think weight was a really good way of doing that.
Yeah. Also, because you've got Focus ST is around, Focus RS is around, Opel, Vauxhall. I've got the VXR going, which gained quite a bit of weight in this generation. So that competition, you've always got the Japanese at this point. It's only recently that Japanese have sort of dipped away, but Civic Type R, which is always the one that's sort of making the claim of the lightweight, the one that's a bit more springing its steps and everything else.
Also very, very quick, that FNT.
Yes. Yeah. So there's all these challenges, and obviously Volkswagen are saying, well, we can meet them all, but this is how we're going to do it. And this is the one I think that has the broadest specification. I suppose Mark II, you could kind of say, had a very wide gap too, but we're saying G60 wasn't technically GTI. So it goes to Mark 7 because Mark 7 has everything. It has the Club Sports, has the anniversary. It does get essentially the R powertrain, and 40th anniversary Club Sport S. It's a strange era for Volkswagen that they do all these versions of the GTI. So I mean, coming straight out the gate, performance. Then you've got the anniversary was always going to come. Club Sport. Club Sport comes 2016, 2017, then Club Sport S, which
a response to Renault because they had their really hardcore stripped out version of that, and they were then engaged in an arms race for Nürburgring lap record for front wheel drive vehicles.
I just love the fact that it was like, what should we do? Oh, well, we've got a more powerful engine in the R. Let's just put that in it. It's like, but hold on a minute. The R department have been slamming the door in our face for the last 10 years.
Well, let's rip out the rear seats then.
Let's convince them by doing something to our car that means you have to really, really want it.
Absolutely.
Really, really just an interesting moment for the GTI. So to give it all this variety, it broke. Well, the newest one has broken a Nürburgring record. This one breaks Nürburgring record in that Club Sport S. The Club Sport S, actually, I don't think it was outrageous money either. If I remember right, it was a fair step up in price, but it was like a fifth increase, not 50% up again sort of thing, which is newer ones. That's the jump you do.
Gained in by the R's position at the time as well. So
yes,
the price point was of that car. That car was very competitive at the time, so that would have been part of how they considered the positioning of that car.
So it gets a facelift, which is probably, I've talked about all the versions, but I think for most people it's actually the facelift year.
Yeah.
So Mark 7 and Mark 7.5, they're all fall under the Mark 7. They all get celebrated in their own way. Generally speaking, if someone owns a Mark 7 and they have a 2017, 18, 19, they will make a point to tell you it's a 7.5. Yeah. I've got the facelift one.
It's the most significant one, isn't it? It's the most significant facelift point is Mark 7. Mark 7.5 really seems to just hone it and optimize it. Volkswagen Group do that for their facelifts, but it just really hit home quite a lot, the 7.5 changes.
Yeah.
I'm still to this day not super sure what it was, but it was a very cohesive car, and as an owner of a Mark 7.5 GTI performance package, right, which I had 8,000 brilliant miles in, it was real. It was right up there. An incredible way to travel.
There must have just been, I suppose, a crossover of things happening, because you've got a little bit more tech comes in, a little bit newer stuff. If you get in a 7.5, an 8 is a different world because they change a lot of things. But no one gets out of a 7.5 and says, I really miss having such and such from the Mark 8. And the Mark 8 does add, Apple CarPlay, things like that. 7.5 gets all this tech put in it. So you're not sat there at this sort of tech loss, if you like.
It's true, but I'm gonna flip that on its head at the moment.
There you go.
So the focus on the Mark 7.5 has been amplified since the Mark 8 came out, because we had another.
We're on that roller coaster,
aren't we? We are on that roller coaster, and the roller coaster's coming around again. So the 7.5 is still at a high point now, now we know what the Mark 8 and 8.5 are.
Yeah.
So I think at the time when Mark 7.5 happened, it was a lot quieter. Now we look back in retrospect, it's a more significant change because of how we transitioned into Mark 8. But yeah, it's no doubt a real high point for the Golf GTI.
I wonder if this same thing can be said with the Mark 6.
Maybe.
Because I'm pretty sure when the Mark 6 came out, if you looked at a 2009 review of the Mark 6, there would have been comments about its succession of the Mark 5. But it was only when the Mark 7 came out that people's view on the Mark 6 started to take, I wouldn't say less of a kind view, but there was this kind of view of maybe it's a plateau car, maybe we haven't moved on from the Mark 5 because the Mark 7 moved so far on the scale. And then, as I say, 7.5 almost feels like the difference of Mark 5, Mark 6. The viewpoint that people have of the car really, really changes on that sort of crossover for facelift. And you see it in used values too, by the way. If you're looking at a Mark 7 GTI, if you're a bit tight on budget, you can get yourself a great early Mark 7 and you'll enjoy it, you'll love it, you'll have a lot of fun. But if you want the one that everyone will say is the best, you're going to spend quite a bit more money. It's surprising how much more money, but you are going to spend more money. And yeah, maybe that I say the 6 is more of just a reflection of how successful the 7 is.
I think so.
So then we step into the current Golf GTI. So I said in the last one, huge range. We get it again with the Mark 8 because the launch car to the anniversary car to then its later. Sorry, did it do 45th and 50th?
The 50th is the 8.5.
And was 8 45th, or did they do that on the 7?
Oh, I'm afraid I do not know, but it'll be right on the crossover.
Yeah, it's on the crossover. I can't actually remember. I'll double check that actually, so we get it right. Let's have a look what it was. I'm tempted to say one of them would have had 2 anniversaries. And I
don't remember if we did anything. Was the Club Sport S or a Club Sport version? Was that a 45th anniversary?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Oh no, there was. It was Mark 8. Mark 8 to 2021. So essentially, it's launch. It gets a Club Sport 45 edition 45.
Okay,
Gets given different names across the world by the looks of it. So yes, you're right. 45th anniversary. It's sort of rolled in with a Club Sport. And then we know there's just been a 50th anniversary. Okay. Shall we talk about the things that really differentiate the 7 and the 8?
Yeah, sure. So actually,
there is more power. There's just as we'll do power and all that sort of stuff in a minute. Let's just put power to the side for a second. Differentiations.
Yeah, so the Mark 8 was a very much a new platform overall for the Golf compared to the Mark 7. It was a significant change, and the electrical architecture also changed. There was also the trend for lacking a reduction of physical buttons was very much alive and well on the Mark 8. So you had things like no real controls at all, which the Mark 7.5 did have. So no volume knob, those kind of things, and also capacitor switches on the steering wheel, which were a bit imprecise. So actually, the Mark 8 overall struggled a bit in terms of the response because of the reduction in things like buttons. The overall environment improved, but actually the GTI for the Mark 8 standardized the performance pack that was on the 7.5. So that is,
you're just getting it now.
Yeah, you're just getting the LSD, the bigger brakes, all the extra power, those kind of things. It's now standard, nice and simple. You carried across the manual gearbox, and the car was still a fantastic drive. It was in terms of dynamics on the GTI, so you can't really question the dynamics. It was more the interaction with the Mark 8 Golf as a whole. Some people had challenges with.
Do you think the choice to essentially just make not have the performance model anymore? There are special versions which are going to get the R engine, so we know basically anniversaries. But do you think that decision would have come about because someone in engineering said we're at horsepower 245 metric horsepower? That's a point where we simply can't do this open diff anymore. In which case you kill off the upsell to performance pack.
I think it will have been part of it, but also the fact the Mark 8 would gain a chunk of weight. So actually, to keep the acceleration figures still competitive, That will have been part of it to standardize that. Also, by that point of Mark 7.5, the mix of performance pack at the end of Mark 7.5 lifestyle will have been really strong in the UK.
Yeah.
So the logic is we need to do a price up anyway for Mark 8 because it's more expensive to build than Mark 7.
So why not?
But if we standardize the performance pack, it's a better communication point to help justify the price up of the car, which is quite a big jump. When Mark 8 came out, cars were increasing their price significantly in the UK.
Yeah.
The Golf had gone in quite short order up in price a lot. So therefore, by standardizing the performance pack, you add a level of how can I say, soup around the pricing increase and the customer value add. So I think that was part of it. To your point, yes, I mean, you were getting a lot of horsepower through an open diff in the front, but actually, I think it's more the commercial side about helping justify the higher price point as well.
I suppose this also means that you're now putting an R engine, so 300 horsepower into the special ones, and it's doable because you're stepping up 65 horsepower from the standard one, so you can keep the GTI character now. So that's a big aspect to how this 8's arrival is. But like you say, it's not. It gets a really mixed view, and the mixed issues it has isn't that about the fact that the GTI end of it. The GTI end of it, people were quite celebratory about.
GTI is still fine.
The Golf underpinnings in general, the fact that you've now got the screen, you've lost the physical buttons, you've got haptics on the steering wheel. That's actually much like the reviews of the regular Golf at the time. This is what's grabbing the headlines, and ultimately, it feels. I kind of feel a little bit for the Volkswagen engineers, sort of somewhere in the GTI program, that they've done a great job on the 7. They're trying to carry that on, but ultimately, what everyone concentrated on were things that they can't change. You can't say, "Oh, actually, can we put some air conditioning controllers on the GTI?" You're out of luck on that one.
The dynamic system, the overall program. Bear in mind, the program, the GTI will have fitted under the overall Golf Mark 8 program. It's all from the very, very start. So, but there will be the engineering and especially the chassis guys and development and the performance development guys who will have been ruining the fact that some of the media sparkle from the overall GTI was distracted by some of the control issues. But some people love them. It was a big tech jump forward, right? All the ADAS features, the luxury features, the interaction, the cleanness of the dashboard. Some people like less buttons, less clutter. So it's just some people don't. But it seemed to create a lot of the talking points in the market.
Yeah. And again, the situation where you are trying to step a car forward, but GTI is always going to find. This is where, if you're a proper journalist, you're going to be most critical. Ultimately, if you like something, I've said this many a time when I review a car, if I like it, I try and be really harsh, because you can allow yourself to give a personal view, and you shouldn't be doing that. You should be giving this item, this thing, is either very, very good, average, bad. Whether you like it, you can then bring through and say, this is the worst car in the world and I love it. And then people can take that for what they want. Because maybe there's something you could say, look, it's actually a bad car, but because it's a bad car, I love it. People drive all types of classics that they break down 15 times on the way to the car show, but they will never sell the thing. They love it. So there is that element. What came through here, unfortunately, I think for the GTI team, was a love of GTI, but a criticism of what it is. And they go to some effort on the 0.5. So this feels a bit like give with one hand, take away with the other. So the Golf in general gets its physical buttons back on the steering wheel. The screen, to me, the difference, 8.5 and 8, it's almost two different companies. The 8.5, whatever your view is on screens, whether you hate them, whether you love them, whether you think they belong in cars, they don't belong in cars, whatever, the interface on the 8.5 is fantastic. They've really worked at it. They've done a great job. And if you can get past the fact you're having to use it for your controls, it is actually, I'd say it's in the top maybe 15-20% of all manufacturers doing a screen.
And more power to Volkswagen for doing that. They very clearly listened through focus, because they've got a very good customer feedback process in the Volkswagen group, and they listened through the feedback from the Mark 8. They didn't, and they listened to customers. They didn't just, they obviously the media is part of it, but actually people
who actually put in their money.
Exactly, and that's the people to focus on. So more power to them. They did pull it back.
So ultimately, you get this. The 8, I don't know. I just, maybe it was just the time. It's the first attempt at it, but it feels like a clunkier thing to use, that screen. Now, ultimately, if you're buying the GTI, that's less important to you because you're buying it for its dynamic way that it drives. And it's more a conversation of if you're buying a 1.5 petrol, 8 versus 8.5, my view is spend a bit more money, get a 0.5. I just think the reaction they had to customer feedback was really good.
But it depends on an 8.5, doesn't it? Because they gave us something on 8.5.
So on the GTI, they gave all this from the base Golf. Take away the manual. Manual goes, and it's a odd thing to I mean, I kind of get it on one side. They weren't really selling any. But if you're selling one, that means there's a purist out there that wants to buy one.
It's a whole different emissions program.
And the other thing we didn't mention on Mark 8 is also, this is actually one of the things that I felt was one of the bigger losses. And I know a lot of people don't care. You lose the 3-door. So on the 7, in the very final years, they just basically refused to. So I think 2020 and 2019, I don't think you can buy. Maybe 2019 there was a few 3-doors, but in its last
3-door hatchbacks in Europe in general have
just gone. Just gone. And so the 8 doesn't get one at all. You can't have the old formula of the 3-door hot hatch GTI. It's gone.
But in fairness, with its competitor set, no one else by that point.
No one else did it either. Three Apple
seats. I mean, so so understandable. But yeah.
So there are things that you can see. The interior controls carried over from the Golf. The fact you lose 3-door. The fact on the 0.5 you lose manual. The purists are always then going to be coming at you because you've then got to prove the car. Unlike what the 5 was doing and what the 7 was doing, which is everything's great. There's no notes type attitude, especially on the facelift 7 and then those sort of edition 30 of the Mark 5. These are where people are saying, "Don't touch it. You've done it right. Don't fiddle with it." And then a load of engineers are saying, "But we want to." Time moves on, and we then get the ultimate version, the latest, which is the 50th anniversary of the GTI.
What a machine!
Just smashes lap record, production front wheel drive car. So it goes after that. Does it does it in a way that I think only Volkswagen could, which is kind of like we've given it special bits here, special bit there. It will stand out.
Amazing paint scheme as well.
Yeah,
it's really good.
They made it stand out in a very. It's not yellow and a Lamborghini. It's like if you're a car enthusiast and you see in this color that car with the little stripe here, that's a 50th anniversary. That's the one. That's the one to have. That person bought the one to have. So fair play to them for coming in, riding along, and going, let's give it something to really celebrate. And I think it does quash a lot of the early criticisms of the car because over and over it shows Volkswagen are saying we understand what our enthusiasts want. We also have to make money from the car, so we lose the 3-door. We also have to be realistic to emissions and everything else, and if that's going to kill the manual, it kills the manual. You're not buying it anyway,
Yeah, exactly. Vote with your feet, people.
This is the problem, isn't it? If the market is going one way, you can lament the loss of things, but ultimately no one buys it, and that's the death of so many enthusiast cars. People always say, "Oh, I'm so sad, so and so's gone." It's like, yeah, I know, because no one bought the thing. Yeah, and it sort of caps out our story. We end in a real highlight, actually.
Yeah.
A lap record.
Yeah.
50 years, an anniversary model, and where the 8 I think stumbled initially. It was coming off the back of the 7.5. It stumbled out initially and had its critics. Some people really liked it, and my view of the 8 is it would still be a car I would buy. I would just accept I'm not going to use the screen much. It's just the you could get used to it. It's just it's a shame actually that it's a whole new screen in the 0.5 and they can't just software update it and give you all that stuff. Maybe that'll be something in time that will come through, but Apple CarPlay it and it's job done.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's in rude house mode, isn't it? The Mark 8.5 is if it's in a good place, right?
Once they came, say if you're looking on the used market and you go 2024 onwards, it's hard as a car enthusiast that wants a car to tick a lot of boxes. Golf in general, it can be a family car. It can also be a performance car in the GTI. You can go red hot performance and go for this 50th anniversary. The only critic I think you can really have of it now is where we step to price point wise, but ultimately that's the world we live in. That's the market, and we can't. Yes, you could buy yourself a 15-year-old Nissan GTR for the same money, but that's a 15-year-old Nissan GTR. Actually, you probably couldn't. Well, you probably have to buy a 17-year-old GTR, and people will buy that new car as we're seeing, and people are turning up. I don't know if the 50th is limited. I'm guessing they will put some sort of cap.
Very possibly, and it's also the timing for bringing out that car is pretty good because we see the FL5 Honda Civic Type R, which has been the darling of all this. The whole hatch brigade is now stepping out.
Yeah,
that's the point for Volkswagen Group to take that back.
The Civic Type R actually is a great just addition to this conversation in that everyone talked about how they loved them. Journalists loved them as well when they came out. Really, really, you never see them. You see loads of in relative performance hatch terms, you'll see a load of GTIs, but people say it's a price thing. Well, you see lots of Golf R's and they were the same price basically. So it shows there must have been something else. And however Volkswagen have done it, they've walked a tightrope that has carried the GTI going, where competitors that look, we both really like Civic Type R, so and we both own Civic Type R. So, but all the competitors have stumbled and gone. Where's the Renault Megane?
Yeah.
Where are these cars?
Very few, which is why it's nice that the 8.5 is in such a good place at the moment, because there's fewer and fewer choices.
What do we think if we were to guess what they'll do for the Mark 9 as an absolute guess? No inside knowledge here of what they'll do, but just as a guess as to what they might go.
I need to check the timing because this week is the week where the EV Golf has officially gone back 2 years to 2030 now for the full.
Interesting.
Okay, which may affect the existing life cycle. Personally, I think if the 8.5 had to carry on longer with the existing platform to bridge that gap, it has the ability to do that.
So we could just see
it carry
3 years more.
What's your take on the Mark 9 then in terms of its timing, what it might be?
Back of my head as a feel, I had the feeling that the GTE has been existing in the Mark 8 as a sort of, this is what your next GTI will essentially become, and seeing what the market acceptance was. And the market acceptance probably hasn't been as high as they wanted it, but it has been higher than if they had a range of worst scenario, best scenario. It's not on the best scenario, but it's definitely not on the worst scenario. And that car, if you think the GT has 270 horsepower, it has, I think, 50, 60, 70 miles of EV range. Really good. And so you're delivering on both ends. Whether you could get people out of their old GTIs and into a GTE, I would imagine what Volkswagen have been looking at is what trade-ins are we getting? When people buy new GTEs from dealerships, do they have a Mark 7 or a Mark 6 or a Mark 5 or a Mark 8 GTI? I'm tempted to say they probably don't. But my feeling would have been that's what would have been planned as some sort of successor. Now I get the feeling that maybe it will be something a little bit different. I don't think if we start the conversation with Polo, GTI being electric, I don't think it will be electric. I think they'll allow electric hot to live in other places, and that this will be some sort of hybrid. I think it has to be hybrid. I think because it's going to have to travel through the years ahead where regulations might stop it being anything but hybrid. Could it be just a self-charging hybrid? Lexus CT200H style?
Terrible comparison. Wow, amazing. Great car though. Yeah. Very different segment. I'm gonna go different.
Yeah,
I think a year or two ago, the transitions to hybrid would or PHEV for replacements GTR would be quite logical. I think that's partially maybe what part of the reason they dropped the manual gearbox in the 8.5 to smooth that transition.
And this is where my mind is
strategic. So I actually think now with what we're seeing with the emission standards and the focus on fun to drive and the unique position, we might see another iteration of the existing 2.0 T engine take one more jump in the Mark 9.
Do you think it could survive if it gets some sort of hybridization, like just enough that it will be able to jump through any hoops that get thrown at it, say in 2035, 2030?
You might see a split because now we have Europe going back to 2035 and the UK still sticking to 2030 for the cutoff date for internal combustion versus hybridization. So we might actually see the GTR
might be a bit of hedging.
It might actually leave the UK if they carry.
Yeah, so they'll just say, okay, we can't sell it, so there's your Polo GTI, exactly. And that's what you got
potentially. I hope that's not the case, but in the UK we might see that. I
think
a potential outcome.
the interesting point you make on because when I said GTE, of course, GTE doesn't carry the GTI engine, doesn't have a 2 litre, the 1.5.
1.5.
Interesting to think that there could be more to take from this to EA 888 engine that's been around for quite a while now.
Yeah, very successful.
Whether the engineers can sort of sit there and say, we know we can get emissions down to X number, we can hold power at the same level, basically 911 GT3, stick 4 cats on it. Do whatever we can.
Well, let's look at the prevailing situation. So we have a situation where Volkswagen Group are in the level of duress for some of the electrification strategy. They've had to do a big write down in terms of EV spend.
Yep.
And they want to put personality and character back into the brand. Also, the R&D spend on a new powertrain for a GTI is hard to justify right now.
Yeah.
So actually, commercially, it might be logical to keep the existing petrol engine going, or with heavy revisions, and also from the brand appeal aspect, they'd like to get more credit for doing that as well. Which is why I think there might still be life in internal combustion for GTI.
It'd be interesting if the next one was just like a 250 mild bump up in power.
Yeah.
But keep everything else. Maybe keep the price sort of to that manageable entry point. I know manageable is relative, but have it so that it's accessible to people. The way to do that probably would be sticking with the 2 litre. Okay, let's end it by choosing one Golf.
Wow.
Not even a mark. You've got to pick a very specific GTI.
A very specific GTI. Wow. Okay. They go back a long way in my family.
Yeah.
I've owned a large chunk.
I think this is a much harder question for you than for me. I put it that way. I know what it is for me.
That maybe. So, in terms of overall package, dynamic attributes, and I have owned this one, a 7.5 with performance pack is very, very hard to beat. In terms of GTI, I'm a big fan. Club Sport S because I love a track car. Maybe that is the really good one, but ultimately my heart lies in a Mark 1 1.6 GTI.
Excellent. Okay. So you're going with 1.6 16 valve?
No, 1.6.
Sorry,
5 speed.
5 speed.
Yeah,
sorry. Okay. So that was, what year was that?
82.
82. Right. That's your pick. My pick is the Mark 7.5, specifically a late 2017. That's before you get OPF.
Right.
But if you have 18, you'll have OPF. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't think it really changed the character of the car. But legally, you could have the facelift and all the things with it and have it without the additional filter. But only, it's a very short window. It was like 13 months or something they built them for.
And I would not question your choice. Yeah.
But yeah, that 7.5 GTI performance pack, that you've got a car that difficult.
Manual or GSG?
This is the challenge. I probably, because if I was to buy one of those, I'd probably look at keeping it very, very long term, and I'd probably have a manual then. But because I don't think there is a manual coming ever again in this car.
We're done.
So just to, every time I go out and drive a manual again, so if I've driven a few cars and they've all been autos, and I think, oh, this makes so much sense having an auto. Just, you can still enjoy paddle shift, blah, blah, blah. And then I get in a manual and I'm going slower, but I'm doing more things. I think, kind of miss this. So if I was buying it, it would be a second car type attitude. If it had to be a one car and I had to have one car forever, then it would be with the DSG. So it's got livable.
Great choice.
That is the end of the podcast, everyone. Thank you. If you've listened all the way through, then thank you for being here. Obviously, thank you, Owen, for coming in for this one. This one was a bit of a marathon. Did warn you all last week. This is what it would be. And I think we still have, there's still so much more to talk about with Golfs. We've specifically covered GTI. Yeah. We haven't covered the sort of top end of Golf and what they've done in that era, and we haven't covered the regular Golf either. So, I mean, we've touched on regular Golf and the other ones throughout. But if you want a podcast like that in the future, then pop a comment down below. Otherwise, make sure you are subscribed. Thank you for watching, and we shall see you in the next one.